I took my kids to the pool today. I had to get in the water with them and the chlorine. I had to use conditioner in my hair. My hair's just off. I'm just off. We're going to have some Muscadet today, though. And then we're going to talk about aerators. All that's coming up next. Hello and welcome to Wine This Week with Scott Leek. We are reviewing Muscadet. So for those of you who for the last 2 weeks have been expecting me to talk about Moscato, that is going to be next week. I promise I'm not going to change it again, and I'll explain why when we get to Moscato. But if we're going to stick with the spelling, Muscadet actually comes next alphabetically. So Muscadet is grown in a region in France in the western part of the Loire Valley. And Muscadet is technically not the grape, although it is the only grape grown there, and it is the only place in the world pretty much you are going to find Muscadet. So the region in the Loire Valley is Muscadet. It's the Muscadet AOC, and within the Muscadet area there are multiple other places. There are 4 primary areas, and the one that you really need to know, and ironically I didn't get that one today, but the one area you need to know if you're going to get a Muscadet is Muscadet Sèvre, and that is about 75% of the production of Muscadet in France. And it is one of those rare cases where the place that makes the most of it is actually the good stuff. All of the other stuff, just Muscadet AOC, not quite as good. You want it to come specifically from that sub-region or the sub-region of the one that we're having today, though this is a little bit harder to find. Now, this grape is, because it is in the western part of the Loire Valley, we're actually fairly close to the ocean, close to the Atlantic, so there's some maritime influence. It is fairly far north as well. If you remember from the Chenin Blanc episode where we talked a little bit about the Loire Valley there, this is high in latitude, 47, 48 degrees north, and therefore wine grapes take a little bit more effort to fully ripen, and thus they give off a little bit more acidity and maybe aren't going to be quite as high in sugar or in alcohol. And actually in Muscadet, it is the only region I'm aware of in France that is by law required that the alcohol be below 12%. So this is a interesting region. There's some nuance to it. It is really cool microclimates and soils, and this gives off a very floral aroma. The fruit tends to be a little muted, but this is bone dry, high acidity, and because again, like, you know, the whole saying of what grows together goes together, this being close to the ocean, that maritime influence, maybe even some salinity, some saltiness to the wine, and this is going to go fantastically with seafood, particularly my all-time favorite pairing, oysters and Muscadet. So let's get started with this particular bottle. Today's wine is a mouthful. Bear with me. I hope I can get this on the first take. Today's Muscadet is Domaine du Bourg Muscadet from the Côtes de Grandlieu, Sur Lie, 2019. I didn't talk about this previously, but the Sur Lie that shows up on the label is kind of a big deal. So there are particular rules in Muscadet about the term Sur Lie. I talked about that in either the Cava or the Champagne episode, and basically the dead yeast cells stay in there and provide some extra flavors and creaminess and texture to the wine. There are very specific rules about whether or not you can put the term Sur Lie or not, depending on where your grapes are grown. So, buying tip, if you're looking for a Muscadet, I would highly recommend you try to find one that says Sur Lie on the bottle. Now, first thing I noticed looking at this is that there is a pretty significant amount of fizz in there, which is not uncommon with Muscadet. It's so cool to see. I know it's like going to be really hard to see in the way I got my light set up, but yeah, there's just this layer of fizz just kind of floating to the top, floating around inside there. It's super cool. Color-wise, this is fairly pale. I mean, let's get that up there for you all to see as well. Not quite straw. I'm gonna go just a pale yellow on the color. It's beautiful, I love it. Oh, that's such an awesome nose. Oh my God, I could smell this all day. This is so fragrant, so floral. It's gorgeous. Oh, there's white flowers and peaches. Some lemon coming through, and there is the notes that I'm assuming are going to be from the Sur Lie coming through. There's a little toastiness, a little brioche breadiness, but it's floral, it's peaches. It's just gorgeous. All right, let's taste it. What a great wine. Okay. Bone dry. There's not a hint of sweetness to this at all. This is so dry. It's great. Crazy high acidity as well. If you do not like high acidity wines, don't even bother with a Muscadet. This is high acidity. It is so juicy. It's interesting, this contrast though, because it's so dry and so acidic. It's like the dryness is almost acting like the way tannins do in a red wine, where it's like kind of drying out your mouth, and that the acidity is making you salivate, and it's this juiciness. It's a great yin and yang balance going on here. That is really great. Oh man. Lemon is coming through a lot more prominently. Oh God, I forgot. Okay. Body. This is kind of medium bodied. Again, that Sur Lie is going to add creaminess, add texture by having it rest on those yeast cells. And I believe this one rested Sur Lie for about 9 months. And the requirements on Sur Lie, I might not get these dates quite right, but in order to put Sur Lie on it, it has to be bottled between like April 1st and November 30th of the year following the vintage. So in this case, this is a 2019. This would have been bottled sometime between April and November of 2020, having rested on the lees for 9 months during that time. So medium body because of that. The alcohol, again, maximum allowed by law is 12%. This is 12%. So not high alcohol. It's actually just perfect for the wine as it is. The intensity of the aromas was pretty pronounced. The intensity of the flavors is a little bit more of a medium intensity. Like I said, the lemon came through a lot. It's more of a white peach than like the fresh Georgia peaches that are like really good right now in summertime. Yeah, but that lemon really coming through, and there's a great minerality that goes with that acidity. Fantastic. Great summer sipper. You could easily just sit on your deck and just carefully not pound this wine. And like I said at the beginning, I absolutely love this with oysters. This is one of the best oyster pairings there is. Raw oysters, of course. Great pairing with that. It's going to bring out, they're going to bring out so much in each other. And there's a hint of salinity with this. Not over the top, not bad. I wouldn't go so far as to call it salty. I had a white wine recently that I would actually call salty. Dissipated quickly. Good and interesting. This is nice. Good minerality, maybe even like kind of a flint description, I would say. And just lovely. It is not a super fruit forward wine. Like I said, the lemon's there, the peach is there, undeniable. But the intensity is a little bit lower than it is in, let's say, a California Chardonnay. So if you really need a ton of pop you in the mouth fruit, Muscadet might not be for you. But again, it's a great summer sipper. It's refreshing, zingy, fresh acidity, good fruit coming through, floral nose. There's just so much to like about this wine, and I love the mouthfeel. And I could, like I said, I could smell this all day. So food pairings, again, go with the oysters. Anything seafood would be great with this. And I would even say you could do like a light chicken dish and While I'm not a huge cheese expert, I did read this goes very well with goat cheese as well. So those are the pairing recommendations. I did this a little out of order. Balance is great on this. The intensity, I'm not going to call it super intense. There is some nice complexity to this. Decanter scored this wine 95 points. I'm not going to quite go that high, but for a wine that's less than 20 bucks, great value here, and good finish on the wine as well. I'm going to go 7 points on this, giving it great points for the balance and the complexity. It's nuanced. You got to look for it. You got to be patient and let it kind of come to you. And I'm drinking this at cellar temperature. I'm not drinking this at like out of the fridge. So I think that's helping me get more of those notes and more of the nuance from the flavors. So if you have this and you're like, I don't taste anything, let it warm up a little bit. I know that sounds a little weird with a white wine, but this is better a little bit warmer. It's going to be great ice cold, not ice cold, but right out of the fridge. But if you want more of those flavors to come through, let it warm up to around 55, 6 degrees, and this should be singing. So we've talked about a number of essentials you need to have to enjoy wine at home. We've talked about the wine key, making sure you've got a good actual waiter's key, making sure you've got good stemware. Truly, those are the two most vital things you need to enjoy wine at home. We talked about preservation systems as well, the vacuum sealer, and specifically the one that you need if you're gonna store leftover champagne. Those are good to have as well. Now we're gonna start to get into some gadgets that maybe are just kind of best left being called gadgets. One of them is the aerator. And there's a number of different brands that make these. They all do essentially the same thing. You pour the wine in, you got two little holes here drilled out coming out of the sides that are going to add some air to it, and it comes through. And it does the job essentially of decanting the wine, of letting it breathe, of getting oxygen in there, oxygenating, oxidizing the wine. And particularly on young, kind of tightly wound wines, that allegedly is going to help that wine open up, round out some edges, soften it a little bit, let the fruits come out, and help your wine be a little bit more complex. Yeah. In reality, I can't say that that's really been a noticeable change for me. And I'm going to actually demonstrate just how this works real quick here, and in the process complain about this thing. So granted, you wouldn't really do this with a white wine, but you certainly can. But yeah, you're just going to hold it over your glass. It makes that weird little gurgling sound. But here's the thing, like, you have to hold it over your glass. If you're going to decant it and then pour it back in the bottle, like, that doesn't rest on the bottle. Like, it's just a weird design. And then you sit it in there, and then you got to clean that out too. I'm not impressed with the user experience design of this thing. Let me give this a smell. It smells the same to me as it did before. Granted, I know I'm not doing it with a red wine. Yeah, it tastes the same too. Shocking. So if you have one of these and you like using it, by all means, keep using it. My overall recommendation though, save your money. I would rather you spend money on a decanter, but even then, if you don't want to spend money on a decanter, pour it in a pitcher. Like, get a random glass water pitcher. Anything that you can use to pour the bottle into another vessel and let it have more surface area. Let it get out of this bottle that it's been trapped in for a year or more, and let it breathe. Let it get a little oxygen and let it blow off a little bit of that funk, a little bit of that tightness. And the fun thing about wine is letting it breathe and evolve and change right before your eyes, and notice, what does it taste like when you first had it versus 10 minutes later, 30 minutes later, an hour later. To me, that's a lot of the fun of enjoying wine, and it's going to help you improve your palate and help you improve your experience as a wine drinker and taster, to be able to experience those subtle changes as they happen. So unless you're really in a hurry to get drunk, in which case I'd say get yourself a, don't have a hole in the bottom of this, get yourself just a good shot glass and take yourself some shots of whiskey if you really just need to get wasted. Otherwise, what are you in a hurry for? Thank you for watching another episode of Wine This Week. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, please like and subscribe. Join me next week as we finally, and I'm not going to change my mind again, we are going to have Moscato next week, specifically Moscato d'Asti. Until then, keep trying new wines, and as always, cheers.